You know, the idea of an antichrist, this great deceiver who's prophesied to show up at the end of time, it's a really powerful concept in so many of the world's major religions. In Islamic eschatology, this figure has a name, al-Masih al-Dajjal. So today we're going to dive into this really complex character, and we'll be drawing on the work of scholar Imran Hossein to try and understand who, or maybe what, Dajjal really is.
So, that brings us to the big question we're tackling, based on this source material. Who, or maybe even what, is this great deceiver? The prophecies are just packed with descriptions that are, on one hand, shockingly literal, and on the other, deeply symbolic. Let's start unpacking them.
Okay, first things first, let's break down the name. The source is super clear on this. Dajjal isn't his actual name. It's more of a title, an Arabic term for a great liar or a great deceiver. And al-Masih just means the Messiah. So when you put it all together, al-Masih al-Dajjal, you get the Messiah, the great deceiver. Or, to put it simply, the false Messiah. His entire mission, his whole purpose is impersonation.
To really get a handle on this impersonation, we've got to start with a physical description. And according to Imran Hossein, some parts of this profile are meant to be taken, well, quite literally.
And when you get into the details of what he's supposed to look like, it's surprisingly specific. The Prophet Muhammad is said to have described Dajjal as a young, powerfully built Jewish man with curls in his hair. The author points out that these curls or sideburns actually connect directly to a biblical injunction, which would mark him very clearly for the audience he's trying to deceive. So far, pretty straightforward, right?
But then, we get this quote from a hadith, a saying of the Prophet, and it introduces probably the most famous, and definitely the most puzzling, thing about Dajjal. He's described as being one-eyed. And this is presented as a really crucial piece of the puzzle, something unique that no one had ever said before. And that is the core puzzle, right? If his appearance as a Jewish man with curly hair is literal, should we also be on the lookout for a guy who is literally, physically one-eyed? Well, this is where the source makes a huge pivot, moving away from the literal and into the allegorical, suggesting there's a much deeper meaning we need to find.
Which brings us to what the author calls a tale of two eyes. And this isn't just about a physical thing, it's about two totally different ways of seeing the world.
The prophecies get even more specific and frankly a little weird here. It says his right eye is the blind one. And it's not just blind, it's described in this really vivid, kind of creepy way, like a bulging grape. A detail that specific is practically screaming for an interpretation that goes beyond just the physical. Now here's the key piece of evidence, according to the author, for why this isn't literal. Another prophecy says that the word kafir, which means disbeliever, will be written right on Dajjal's forehead. And it says every believer will be able to read it, whether they're illiterate or not. I mean, how can you read a word if you can't read?
The answer, according to the source, is that we have to understand there are two different kinds of sight. There's our external sight, our physical eyes that see the material world around us, but then there's our internal sight, that spiritual vision, the insight of the heart that can see and perceive truth. That illiterate believer, they're reading with this internal sight.
And boom, just like that, the whole two eyes puzzle starts to make sense. Dajjal's good eye, his left eye, represents his perfect external, material vision. He can see, understand, and totally master the physical world. But his blind right eye, that bulging grape, it symbolizes a complete and total internal blindness. He is spiritually blind. He literally cannot perceive truth.
But, of course, figuring that out just opens up an even bigger, deeper question. If his blindness is a sign of this profound spiritual emptiness, what does that tell us about what he fundamentally is? I mean, what kind of being is physically present but totally spiritually vacant?
And this is where we get to the author's most central and honestly most startling claim, that Dajjal is, for all intents and purposes, a soulless being. To explain this, the author points to a very specific term from the Quran, jasad. It's a word that's used to describe a body, a human body, that has no soul, no spirit. Think of it like an empty vessel.
And the author points us directly to this verse in the Quran. It talks about God testing King Solomon by placing a jasad, a soulless body, right there on his throne. This single verse is the scriptural foundation for this entire idea.
So this event in the story of Solomon isn't just some old story. The source material presents it as a direct preview, a prophecy of Dajjal's ultimate mission.
So the logic here, according to the source, kind of breaks down into three simple steps. First, you have this soulless body, this jasad, that appears on the throne of the ruler of Holy Israel.
Second, Solomon instantly sees it for what it is, an imposter, a counterfeit trying to steal his place. And third, the author makes the direct connection. This Jasad is Dajjal, the false messiah whose whole mission is to one day come back and try that exact same thing again.
Solomon's reaction to this was, as you can imagine, immediate and pretty profound. Seeing this vision of a future imposter sitting on his throne, he makes this powerful prayer to God, that his unique kingdom, Holy Israel, could never be copied or truly belong to anyone else after him. It was like he was asking for a divine firewall to protect against this very imposter.
So this all leads to a really wild conclusion about what Dajjal actually is. He's not just some evil guy or a demon in a human suit. He is a jasad, a unique creation, a human body with no soul, and because of that, no free will. He's almost like a robot, externally programmed for this one single deceptive mission.
But why this mission? Why does this soulless imposter have to show up not just as a religious teacher, but as this powerful, kingly figure? What's the endgame of this incredibly elaborate deception? The final piece of this puzzle is all about understanding what Dajjal is trying to pull off. See, his mission isn't just to lie to people, it's to restore a lost kingdom.
To successfully pretend to be the Messiah for his intended audience, Dajjal has to check all their boxes. And the interpretation here is that the awaited Messiah is expected to be a Jew who will bring back the kingdom of Israel as a major ruling state. He has to be this figure of incredible power and wisdom, a ruler on the same level as the great prophet kings David and Solomon. So, Dajjal is basically programmed to fit that job description perfectly.
So what does this all mean in the end? Well, according to this take, Dajjal isn't just some liar. He's the ultimate test of perception itself. He has completely mastered the external world, the world we see with our physical eyes, but he's totally blind to internal truth. And that leaves us with a really critical question to think about. In an age so full of powerful deception, are we ourselves seeing the world with both of our eyes?